question is, does Erdogan have visions of reconstructing the Ottoman Empire? Well, he might, and this was a big move in that direction. Israel is a big winner. They've already moved on the Golan Heights. I said they took that in the 67 war, defended it in the 1973 war. They did, but now they've moved even closer because the Syrian army just vanished, just melted, took off the uniforms, put on civilian clothes, kind of headed for the hills. We'll see what happens next. But they abandoned posts that were Syrian, kind of in the no man's land between Syria and Israel, Israeli parts of the Golan Heights. Israel has now moved its tanks forward. The rebels, or the jihadists, couldn't put up much of a fight. So Israel has taken more of the Golan Heights. U.S. is a big winner. Look, the U.S. Was one of the backers of this. The biggest backer was Turkey, but the U.S. counted on the CIA to be involved in this. They wanted to give Russia a black eye. Obama was talking about the al-Assads, back in 2012, 2013. Well, it was a while ago, but now the Assads are gone. The U.S. can give itself a pat on the back, and again, it gives Russia a black eye because Russia was the main backer, along with Iran, of Syria and the al-Assads. There are some parties I would say are losers and winners. The Kurds, for example, in the West, the parts of adjacent to Turkey, they're a loser because Turkey actually trained and backed this jihadist army that came in. And so to the extent that Turkey has strengthened its hand in Western Syria, the Kurds are losers. But in Eastern Syria, closer to Iraq, the Kurds might actually have greater autonomy because Erdogan of Turkey's got his hands full now with what happened. Russia is, again, I would say a loser and a winner. They've lost Syria. They've lost their main client, which is al-Assad. They have a major air base in Syria. They have a major naval base on the Mediterranean Sea in Tartus. This is very important to Russia. You just have to look at a map of Russia. About 80% or 90% of the coastline is frozen. It's not far from the Arctic Circle or in the Bering Sea, and so they don't have warm water ports year-round. They do in the Black Sea, but the Black Sea has a choke point, which is the Bosporus, which is controlled by Turkey. I doubt Turkey would close it, but Turkey can certainly threaten that. But Russia had gained a warm water year-round port in Syria for their navy. They still have it, but that's now in jeopardy. They're going to have to see if they can do a deal with Turkey to maintain that, but it's not clear. So Russia is a big loser in Syria, although they may be able to preserve some of their military presence. But they're a winner in Ukraine. One of the reasons Syria didn't ride to the rescue of Assad was because they've obviously got their hands full in Ukraine. They're winning decisively in Ukraine. I don't want to spend too much time on the Ukrainian war, but to the extent that Russia no longer has to deal with Syria, even though that's a loss, it probably strengthens their hand in Ukraine. I would add to all of this, everything I just described, and I took you through the winners and losers, what I call the cautionary tale. This was regime change. The U.S. was involved, mainly led by Turkey, but the U.S. was definitely involved. The history of U.S. regime change is horrible. It just really ends badly. We're good at it. We do it. Gaddafi got killed in Libya. Saddam Hussein was hanged in Iraq. We occupied Afghanistan for 20 years. We backed up Ukraine. Well, what's happened in all these places? Iraq is now under the thumb of Iran. Libya is in chaos. The Taliban are back in charge in Afghanistan, and the Ukrainians are losing badly to Russia. So I said the U.S. In Ukraine, we did the regime change in 2014 with that Maidan so-called color revolution, but backed by the CIA and MI6. So we're good at regime change, but we're not good at the outcome. And I would say sometimes I wonder if the U.S. just wants chaos, meaning it's not that we have a policy of substituting one ruler for another. We just want to stir the pot and make sure things fall apart. If the U.S. wants chaos, to paraphrase H.L. Mencken, we may soon get it good and hard. So I just want to update. So that's an overview. Some of that may be new to you, a little more detail than you're hearing from the legacy media. But I just want to extend that. There's literally news breaking as we speak on a daily basis. So I just have a few notes on that which I'll go through. Number one, this was definitely a regime change operation. Don't let anyone tell you it's a popular uprising. People are cheering in the streets. Yeah, maybe a few people waving flags here and there. This was regime change. It was orchestrated. It's been planned for months, by the way. Again, this army was training inside Turkey. It was not a coincidence that Israel took out Hezbollah. Bashar al-Assad, the leader, where was his speech to the people? What did he do to rally his generals? What did he do to say we're going to fight back? We're going to fight to the last man to defend Damascus? He didn't do any of that. He and his entire family have now they're now in Moscow. They got out. He's going to have to adjust from warm weather to cold weather, but they're in Moscow. But in the run up to this, in the months ahead, and he took his family to Moscow some months ago and left them there. He went back to Syria for a while, but the fact that he left his family in Moscow almost seems like he knew what was coming, and he didn't do anything to rally the troops, so to speak. And by the way, why did the Syrian army they literally took off the uniforms, put on civilian clothes, and just melted? There was no fighting, there was no resistance. You can win or lose in a war, but they didn't even fight. What's up with that? Well, highly likely that the Syrian generals were in on it. They got bribes. They were paid probably by Turkey, maybe by the U.S. And they said, hey, when this starts, don't fight us. Just your leader's gone. He's on his way to Moscow. Israel controls the south. Israel may move up to the Litani River in Lebanon. By the way, I said Israel took territory in the Golan Heights, which they did. They may be taking a little slice of Lebanon while they're at it, up to the Litani River, which is kind of a natural border some distance into Lebanon from the current Israeli border. So it looks like the generals might have been bribed. A lot of people saw this coming. I'm sure the U.S., U.K., France were all in on it. But there's no question that Turkey was the leader of this. By the way, how does a ragtag group of about 15,000 jihadists overrun the entire Syrian army, bearing in mind that Syria's been fighting Israel for 30 years? Well, they did it with Turkish drones in part. So between the drones coming and the money and the bribes and the pre-production, this was a regime change operation. Again, not anything to do with a popular uprising, and Assad almost certainly saw it coming. So at this point, Turkey's in charge. But they've got their hands full. It's one thing to set up a jihadist army, go in and overthrow Assad, although, as I say, he might have seen it coming. He's gone. They're in Damascus. They're taking over the government, etc. But Turkey's sitting there saying, well, okay, we can pull all the strings. As I say, we've got a big chunk of Syria now. It's good old Ottoman Empire days. I wouldn't be so sure of that if I were Erdogan. I said that a lot of times U.S. regime change operations, and this is one of them, end badly. This may end very badly for Turkey. So what are the possible outcomes here? Well, one is, this is kind of, Joe Biden. I mean, I have to constantly remind people that he's still the president. I mean, Trump's the one running around the world, shaking hands with world leaders in Paris and, seeming to run the show. That's just shows you how weak. There's basically nobody home at the White House. I'd say pull the 25th Amendment and get rid of Biden, but then you'd be stuck with Harris and you'd be worse off.